that when the law was written, it did not mean to cover, for example, epilepsy.
Well, it's that devil again. Who wants to
I must have been a dumb idiot when I wrote the dang thing to not cover myself. But the court said that was not the intent of it. So we had to redo the ADA, and we redid it 18 months ago to say that the Congress did mean to cover all disabilities, intellectual disabilities, those disabilities you could not see, diabetes, epilepsy, and so forth. So 18 months ago, we passed ADA Amendments Act to make sure that it was clear that all disabilities were included. Now, today, people say, well, why isn't the ADA really cleared all this up? Well, first off, it's been very successful in getting state governments to comply with the law. For example, access to courts with all these beautiful steps and so forth. A lot of people with disabilities couldn't get access to courts. Now the states have to comply with that. And there's been good compliance. We had to force it, but been good compliance. So you go through and a lot of the provisions are there. The one that we've really had trouble with is employment. Employment is still not there. And one of the reasons is that you have the Federal Contractors Act says that anybody who supplies services to the federal government has to make sure they don't discriminate against people of color, women, and people with disabilities. Now that's been the law of the land. That's been the law of the land for a long time. Now, it's enforced in regards to women and people of color. It has not been enforced in regards to those of us with disabilities. And this administration has just announced that they are going to enforce that provision. So if you can imagine that all federal contractors, if you're supplying paper, paper towels, toilet paper, stationery paper, jets, whatever it is that is supplied to the federal government, that you have to have a plan of hiring people with disabilities, that you cannot discriminate. You have to actually hire people with disabilities. If you think about that across the country, what a difference it would make. Because the unemployment rate today of people with disabilities is the worst of all groups. So if that law were enforced, and it's going to be now, that law, once it's enforced, will make a dramatic difference in regards to the employment rate for those of us with disabilities. So that's the next thing that I'm really excited about that could happen, and it could happen, and it will happen, in my view. Will happen by mid-next year. It will be completed. So I'm really excited about that.
Having read the congressman's bio, I could tell you that we could be here all night. You have just a fascinating story in life. He didn't even touch on the fact that back in 2000, he was the campaign chairman for Al Gore.
Florida knows something about that.
Now, I will tell you that unfortunately he had a health problem and got the vice president nominated for president and then had to leave the campaign. So we can't blame Florida on Congressman Coelho, is that correct? But I am impressed the fact he's willing to come back into the state. So thank you for doing that. And I'm sure there's a whole evening, I'm sure, of fascinating campaign stories we could talk about, but we won't do that. Many you probably can't say in public. I want to end tonight by something, and he didn't know I was going to do this. When he first ran for Congress, believe it or not, his opponent decided to bring up his epilepsy against him. And I want to read a little blurb, and forgive me for reading it, but I want to get it right. It says, during his first campaign for Congress, Coelho's opponent asked how many people would feel if Coelho went to a meeting at the White House and had a seizure. Quote, the press called me and the good Lord was with me, Coelho later related. Quote, off the top of my head I said, well, in 13 years, I have served in Washington. I knew a lot of people who went to the White House and had fits. At least I'd have one. At least I'd have an excuse. But thank goodness for us, you got through that campaign. You were elected. You worked hard for causes of all of us who are here tonight, as well as many others, which we haven't gotten into. But you are one of those amazing men who overcame those challenges and continue to go out there each and every day working for us, and we appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's all.